Act 1 of Episode 1 is over, and people are really mad, so I guess the honeymoon phase is over. Act 1 is the first step after the events of the final shape. Some mysterious thing has landed on Nessus called an Echo, although I think they call it they don't call it an Echo really in game. It's not referenced very often as an Echo, but it's called an Echo, and we need to go check it out. Echoes are going to be the basis of each one of the episodes this year, like episodes 2 and 3, I believe, also revolve around these echoes and certain individuals finding them. Anyway, Failsafe makes a return and will be a central character for this episode. First week, we get into our intro mission. We investigate the Echo. We learn about what's happening on Nessus, what's happening with the Vex, all that good stuff. We come to learn that the Vex are actually trying to change things up. They are normally very established in their ways. A new signal comes along, and now something's going on. The episode activity has you collecting data, collecting samples for Failsafe to analyze, and she's like, yep, stuff's happening all right. You also have the other activity, Enigma Protocol, which is another part of the story. Someone is uploading Golden Age data, something like that. There's also mentions of Maya Sundaresh, who we learned a bit about with the Veil Containment lore dumps during Lightfall, so there's a bit to start piecing together. Week 2 was kind of a burner week in terms of the story. We have Ikora being a bit concerned about all the events that are happening, but it was more of a gameplay-driven week. Week 3 starts a more unexpected chain of events, and this is a spoiler warning. I really recommend going to play this for yourself if you haven't already, because it's definitely the best part of the episode thus far. So, spoiler warning right now. The week starts with more data, more samples, all that kind of stuff, but then Osiris is like, yo, Saint is not picking up the phone. What's the deal? And Failsafe's like, yeah, I mean, there's no interference. He's just choosing not to talk to us, so we gotta go find him. Saint 14 is sort of put into a trance by someone calling themselves the Conductor, and he learns about the Corridors of Time and him being a copy of like the real Saint 14, so he's kind of having an identity crisis about that. Meanwhile, Nessus is starting to transform, although you only see this in the mission itself. The big Radiolaria lake in the cistern is emptied out and it's replaced with new geometry, while the Vex have apparently been learning more advanced combat techniques like falling back and retreating, stuff that they don't normally do. We rescue Saint and he's all like, bro, I'm just a copy, I'm not even a real guy. And we're like, no, Saint, we love you and you're definitely totally real and stuff. And he's just like, I need a minute, dude, I need some time alone. And we're like, do what you gotta do, bro, we get it. And then that's where we're at after Act 1. I am personally enjoying Failsafe this time around way more than I did back at the launch of the game. I've never been a super big enjoyer of Failsafe, but I'm not really a hater either. She just didn't really do anything for me. She seems really happy to be back with the team. It was fun seeing her catch up on the events of what's happened over the past few years. And there were even a couple more like real moments where she felt very sincere about rejoining, and I liked that a lot. And then there were other times where she was back to her more exaggerated self, like making the beeping noises when you were collecting data.
Beep boop. Beep boop. Beep boop. Beep boop.
The dialogue in Helm's, like, it's pretty good. Like, let's keep that energy. You were making me like this character. Okay, keep doing that. Also, the whole changing Nessus's geometry thing is really cool, but it's only in that mission. It would be way cooler if that persisted on patrol and like everything else that we do. I realize that's very easy to say, but in terms of actually making that happen, I'm guessing it's not as easy. The first thing is just that some people will have that new geometry unlocked and some people won't. So you gotta maybe matchmake people based on how far along they are in the quest. That's something pretty new to the game. I don't recall having something like that in Destiny. I know that's a thing in WoW, like how a zone is instanced based on how far you are in the story. Essentially, it's probably harder than it looks, or than it is to say, but it would be really cool if the zones changed in Patrol and in every other activity that might be there as you experienced the story. Breach executable, the episodic activity, I'm kind of neutral on. I don't think it's the best. I don't think it's the worst. I think it's very in the middle, par for the course. Although Bungie did announce some quality of life changes coming for it, like more piston locations to hit with your hammer, and them making the location of it more easily located. You also won't be teleported to your teammates nearly as quickly if they run ahead, and picking up samples is now instant. So 4 very good adjustments there. They're also nerfing the expert version. Because Void Threat is always active, when Air Superiority was also active, it just kind of made the experience miserable. So this is one PvE nerf that I'm definitely a bit more in favor of. It wasn't really fun difficulty, it was just kind of obnoxious more than it was like challenging. Enigma Protocol, on the other hand, I think is pretty neat, but I do think it'll be run far less often because it requires a little more effort and it's a bit longer of a run. But I like the speed run feeling of it. It really keeps things moving. The combat's not too bad either. The Sparrow parts are fun. I enjoyed it. It's also a nice callback to some stuff from Season of the Splicer, Season 14, which is a very well-liked season. From my point of view, I think we're sort of in a so far so good situation, but I know I don't hold similar takes compared to the rest of the community, or at least the rest of the vocal community, because some of y'all are in a frenzy, in a bad way, about this first act. I think where I differ from the community is that I never really super bought into the idea that episodes were going to be drastically different from seasons, despite all the marketing Bungie did for episodes. I always felt that it was going to be somewhat similar. So when they did end up being somewhat similar, I basically had no reaction because that's what I was originally anticipating. Bungie did talk about episodes a lot pre-Final Shape though. Quote, changing up the structure so that we can pleasantly surprise you guys more frequently in the future, end quote. New quote, it's all about change frequently. It's all about deeper story moments, end quote. New quote, episodes are a big shakeup to the actual content delivery for Destiny 2, end quote. New quote, more frequent story beats compared to seasons, so players can expect to experience new bursts of storytelling, end quote. So naturally, you can understand why people haven't really been the most excited about the rollout of Episode 1, Act 1. I think the only thing that's felt different is that Failsafe hasn't told us that we specifically need to identify X number of pieces of data in order to fix the MacGuffin machine. Like, it's just been a generic go do stuff type request. It's why I said in my How Act 1 Works video that it basically just feels like a season so far, and that's because it's done very little to separate itself from a season so far. If it was just season 24, I'd say, you know, we're looking pretty good. When it comes to the whole time-gated content thing, I stopped having this conversation years ago because it's pretty obvious as to why things are time-gated, and it was also obvious that Bungie wasn't really going to change their content delivery methods. They want people to have something to do every week or almost every week. They want people to be able to log in at reset, and something has progressed forward for them to play. I know a lot of people watching are probably a bit more dedicated than the average player, but I'm sure there are plenty of people still drowning in Final Shape content as well between everything that was delivered there. But it doesn't feel like Bungie can win on the timegate versus not timegate situation, and again, this is a conversation we had 6 years ago. If you timegate, people are mad that you're piecemealing out all the content. If you drop it all at once, people blow through it in a day, and then they whine that there's nothing new for a few weeks, and then I gotta listen to idiots coming into my chat saying, well, that's everything, huh? That's everything they give us, when I'm in a GM Nightfall after beast moding the story in 2 hours like it's Curse of Osiris. I'm not really for or against either one. It's just not that deep to me. It's not what I really concern myself with in the game anymore. I think the fact that we are going to have a pretty lengthy gap of 3 weeks between the end of Act 1 and the start of Act 2 has people also a bit concerned, or at the very least annoyed. I'll refer to the previous paragraph. A lot of people who play the game are still probably not even close to being caught up on everything currently available, so this gap is probably giving them some time to catch up to, you know, the rest of us. If you feel like you've done everything in the game already, then as always, take a break, come back when new stuff comes out. It's kind of funny how all the FOMO stuff now is switching to, great, now Bungie is giving us 3 weeks off where we don't have to worry about missing anything. Even the ability to gain season ranks has been tapered. I was listening to friend of the show Mylan discuss this, his video is in the description, and I like, or rather don't mind, the idea of decoupling the story from the gameplay grindy stuff. Like, if Bungie just wanted to dump all of Act 1's story stuff at once and just let people do their thing, I would be fine with that. But I understand that a lot of the melding of the episodic content and episodic things that we interact with are literally built into the story, so a lot of unlinking would need to occur to make that happen a bit cleaner. Otherwise, you're just dumping all 3 weeks worth of stuff at the same time. But then if you dump all of Act 1 at once, now you're looking at over a month until Act 2, so how are people going to respond to no new story beats for over a month? Also, I do think people are experiencing similar feelings from Witch Queen, where we hit these crazy highs in the main storyline and then had to bring it all back down to reality for something not as high stakes. Final Shape was literally the finale of a multi-year experience. Of course, coming back down and running around Nessus was just gonna feel less impactful. I'm also not really willing to stamp this as a failure or anything without experiencing the entire episode and all of its offerings. I just don't think that's very fair. At the same time, though, if Bungie just wanted to click down to 3 seasons a year instead of 4, I think people would have been very understanding of that. If this was just a ploy to downshift, like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And maybe Bungie thinks that episodes are going to be different enough to seasons and will come to understand that eventually. Like, that's maybe why they hyped it up so much. Or maybe they legit will be different and we just got to let things ramp up. I don't know. Maybe we're jumping the gun here. I'm a little skeptical that we're jumping the gun, but we'll see. And this doesn't really mean that I think what we've gotten is bad. Like, I feel it's been pretty on par with the offerings of the past couple of years, but it's mainly that it's still feeling the same when the vibe was going to be that things would feel different. I think that's everything I got on episode 1 so far. We got a couple weeks to go for Act 2, so in the meantime, work on those class items, the ergo sums, whatever else you got going on, Elden Ring DLC. Just come back a little bit later if you're that bothered by it right now. You know what I mean? Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.